She slapped me so hard my hat spun in the air like a cartoon. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what happened right after. The wildlife officer who just pulled up didn't arrest her. No, he turned to me, snapped his heels together, and gave me a salute like I was his commanding officer. Karen's eyes widened, her mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for oxygen. And for the first time since she showed up on my ranch uninvited, she shut up. She didn't know the land she thought was some cowboy Airbnb with cows was actually a government-classified conservation site. And I wasn't just some flannel-wearing rancher. I was the reason she was about to lose more than just her pride. The day had started like any other, quiet, sunny, and filled with the soothing symphony of clucking chickens, braying donkeys, and the low hum of bees cruising through the lavender patch near the barn. I just finished fixing the western fence when I noticed a strange glint at the edge of the property. At first, I thought it was just sunlight bouncing off a beer can someone tossed out of their truck, but it didn't move like a can. It moved like a Tesla. It rolled slowly onto the gravel path, clearly struggling to handle country terrain, wobbling past a sign that clearly read, "Private property. No trespassing. Seriously, don't." And that's when she stepped out. Mid-50s, power-walking confidence, giant sunglasses, high-end blouse tucked into jeans that had clearly never seen dirt, and cowboy boots that still had a Nordstrom sticker on the sole. Karen had arrived. I watched her storm toward me like she was about to list her complaints to the ranch manager at a Texas-themed amusement park. I barely had time to wipe my hands on my jeans before she opened her mouth. "Excuse me? Do you know you're trespassing?" I raised an eyebrow, then looked around at my own property. "Ma'am, I live here. Been living here for the past 12 years. You must have taken a wrong turn somewhere between delusion and denial." She pulled out her phone like it was a badge. "I have a screenshot of the Zillow listing that shows this land used to belong to the Harris family. I'm part of the Harris family. That makes this land mine." "Used to being the keywords there, ma'am," I said slowly. "I bought this land fair and square from the Harris estate in 2013. There's a deed in the county office with my name on it, and the county sheriff's kid calls me uncle when he comes to help fix fence posts. You're not just wrong, you're dangerously confident about it." Karen ignored every word like she was allergic to fact. She marched up to my pasture fence and stared at the cows like they were planning a rebellion. "And what are those doing here?" "Grazing grass," I replied. "It's kind of their whole thing." She scoffed. "Those are a public safety risk. What if one of them gets out and attacks someone? I'm going to have this entire property shut down. That one over there is named Muffin. She's afraid of butterflies." That's when she lost it. She raised her voice to a decibel only dogs and HOA board members can hear and started recording me with her phone, shouting about property rights, animal code violations, and threatening to call every agency from animal control to the United Nations. I don't know what she thought would happen, but her phone was definitely not helping her case. She ended her rant with a dramatic stomp, pointed a perfectly manicured finger at me, and yelled, "You don't belong here." Now, I'm not a man who angers easily, but something in her voice, how she said "you," made my jaw tighten. Not because she questioned my ownership, but because it was laced with something nastier, something entitled. I was about to reply as calmly as I could when she walked right up to me and slapped me across the face. The birds stopped chirping. One of the goats gasped, I swear. Even the wind paused to see what I'd do. And then, right on cue, the crunch of tires echoed down the gravel drive. A dark green SUV pulled up, federal plates, tinted windows, and a logo on the side that read Department of Wildlife and Environmental Security. The door swung open, and out stepped Officer Jenkins. Tall, lean, sunglasses glinting in the sun. His boots hit the ground like a countdown, one step at a time. Karen, still smug from her assault, turned to yell something at him. He didn't even glance at her. He looked straight at me. Then he stood up straight, brought his right hand to his brow, and gave me the kind of salute you see in military funerals and presidential briefings. Karen blinked. "Why? Why is he saluting you?" I leaned in just a bit and whispered, "Because I'm not just a rancher. And this isn't just any ranch." That was the moment everything changed. You could see it in her face. She thought she was dealing with some backward farmhand growing hay and raising cows for milk. She didn't know about the real reason this land was untouchable. She didn't know about the reports filed with the Department of Environmental Defense. She didn't know that the patch of wilderness behind the North Field was home to a species so rare its nesting ground was monitored by satellite. She didn't know that I'd spent 15 years as a covert field agent protecting ecological secrets that corporations would pay billions to bulldoze. She didn't know that she'd just slapped a federally certified guardian of a classified wildlife preservation zone. And she definitely didn't know what was coming next. I nodded at Jenkins, who walked toward us slowly, calm as a Sunday afternoon, but with the weight of a 1,000-page legal case in his back pocket. Karen took a step back, suddenly unsure of herself. Wait, what's going on? I smiled. You wanted to claim land that doesn't belong to you, harass a government official, and endanger protected wildlife. Congratulations, Karen. You just committed 3 federal offenses in 5 minutes flat. The Tesla beeped nervously behind her, like it knew it had driven into the wrong storyline. Karen, for once in her life, said nothing. She just stood there as the wind finally returned and carried with it the sound of a distant eagle screeching overhead. Funny thing about ranches. You never know who really runs them until someone like her comes stomping through. Officer Jenkins didn't waste time. He stepped between me and Karen like a human firewall, his calm demeanor somehow more intimidating than if he'd come out screaming. Karen's smirk had completely dissolved. You could almost see the gears in her head trying to process what she'd just walked into. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. Her hands fluttered uncertainly, one still holding the phone that had just recorded her slapping a federal asset. Jenkins turned to me and gave a respectful nod before tilting his head slightly toward her. Want me to handle this now, or later? He asked. I shrugged, brushing a bit of dust off my sleeve. Let's see what kind of damage she's already done before we decide. Karen, sensing she was no longer the main character in her own drama, jumped in. Excuse me. I have rights. I have documents that say this land used to belong to the Harris family. Jenkins didn't even blink. Ma'am, are you under the impression that a screenshot of a real estate listing overrides federal land protection agreements? Karen hesitated. Well, I mean, it says. He cut her off with a chuckle. No, it doesn't. And even if it did, this land has been under federal watch since 2011. You're not just trespassing. You're interfering with an ongoing environmental study. That's a felony in 3 states and a federal crime in all 50. Karen's jaw dropped. Environmental study? What kind of study? Now it was my turn to step forward. One that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with why your fancy developers have been sniffing around here for the last 6 months. That got her attention. Her eyes darted back and forth between us like she was trying to figure out how much we knew. What she didn't realize was, we knew everything. The so-called inheritance story she was pushing wasn't just wrong. It was part of a much larger con. See, Karen wasn't some clueless suburban mom with a bad sense of boundaries. She was a scout, a decoy, a distraction with lip gloss. She'd been sent by a real estate conglomerate called Greenvine Holdings, a development company known for acquiring abandoned or unclear title land and flipping it into luxury real estate, golf courses, resorts, exclusive retirement communities. And they were after this land not because of the view, but because of what was under it. About a year ago, I'd noticed survey markers in the woods. At first, I thought some local kids were messing around, but then I found drone parts. Not the kind you buy at Walmart. These were top-end surveillance drones, modified with long-range cameras and thermal imaging, hidden in birdhouses masked as nesting boxes. They weren't just spying on my livestock, they were mapping the terrain. Someone was planning a takeover, so I called in an old favor. Officer Jenkins wasn't just a wildlife officer. He was part of a deep branch under the Department of Environmental Security, a team that handled eco-terrorism, illegal land grabs, and protected species sabotage. He and I had worked together back when I was still embedded in field operations. After I retired, I came out here for peace and quiet, but I never gave up the badge entirely, not when I knew what this land held. Karen, in her infinite confidence, thought she'd just slap around a rancher and get a chunk of land for her buddies. But the area she was standing on wasn't just dirt and grass. Beneath that stretch of pasture was a subterranean cave system where a colony of glacier owls nested, one of only 2 populations left in the world. They weren't just rare. They were priceless, and the habitat completely irreplaceable. The government knew it. Scientists knew it. Greenvine Holdings knew it. But they couldn't build until they discredited me and found a legal loophole to claim the land. That's where Karen came in. Jenkins pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through recent drone captures. Karen tried to peek at the screen, but he turned away sharply. Not for your eyes, he muttered. Look, she said, trying to regain control. This is all just a misunderstanding. I didn't know anything about owls or studies, or... You didn't need to, I interrupted. You just needed to start chaos, stir up a conflict, make a scene. Maybe get me arrested for assault or get a civil dispute started in court. Delay me long enough for your bosses to file a development claim under some obscure loophole. That was the plan, wasn't it? Karen took a step back. Her face had gone pale. I didn't sign up for anything illegal. Then you're dumber than they thought, Jenkins muttered before tapping his earpiece. Control, this is Ranger 7. We've got a breach attempt confirmed, level 3. Requesting drone sweep and a legal team to prep for asset defense. The words hit Karen like a brick wall. She suddenly realized she wasn't in some reality TV episode. This wasn't a cute spat over fences. This was a federal incident, and she was right in the middle of it. Jenkins leaned in toward me. The cave sensors picked up ground vibration last night. Someone brought in equipment. Not from this side of the property, though. I nodded. East Ridge. Exactly. Hidden behind the tree line. Looks like an access road's being cleared. That was the next phase of their plan. If Karen couldn't bait me into legal trouble, they'd sneak in from the far side of the property and claim the land was unmarked, that it wasn't being maintained. Standard dirty tactics. But now they'd made a mistake. They sent someone too loud, too brash, and they did it too close to a government-protected zone. Karen, sensing the conversation had turned tactical, tried to sneak back to her car. Jenkins raised a hand. I wouldn't do that if I were you. We've already logged your vehicle plates, facial ID, and your transmission data. That phone you're holding? It's now evidence. She froze, then slowly lowered the phone, setting it on the ground like it might explode. I took a deep breath and looked out over the horizon. The ranch was quiet again, but I knew that wouldn't last long. This was only the beginning. Greenvine was too deep into their operation to back off just because one scout got caught. They'd come back stronger and sneakier. But now we had legal cause, surveillance data, and an aggressive line of defense. Karen stood silently as Jenkins called in the team, her bravado replaced by visible regret. I didn't know if she understood how deep she was in or if she was still playing dumb in hopes of a deal. Either way, she was about to learn something they never taught in HOA meetings. When you pick a fight on a ranch like mine, you better make sure the ground you're standing on isn't government property protected by an ex-operative with a grudge and a badge. The wind that evening carried a strange stillness across the ranch, the kind you get just before a storm rolls in. Not the kind of storm that shakes trees or floods dry riverbeds, but one that rips through reputations, exposes lies, and leaves careers scattered like broken fences. Karen had been escorted off the property by Officer Jenkins, not under arrest yet, but certainly flagged and warned. Her Tesla was impounded for evidence, her phone entered into a federal data vault, and every step she'd taken on the land was now part of an ongoing investigation. But I knew better than to think it was over. She was just the first spark. The real fire was still coming. I spent that night in the control shed deep behind the barn, surrounded by dusty feed sacks and a wall of high-tech surveillance equipment that looked wildly out of place next to old hay bales and tools from the 70s. People thought I was paranoid for keeping all this tech. In truth, I was just prepared. I hadn't kept these systems active for livestock theft or teenage trespassers. I kept them for moments like this. When I first bought the ranch, I installed a basic security system, motion sensors, a few cameras near the gate. But over time, as I learned more about the land's hidden value, I upgraded, installed heat sensors, vibration monitors, and drone docks in the hills. What most people saw as birdhouses were actually solar-powered microstations with panoramic lenses. My ranch wasn't just a ranch. It was a grid, a digital web that recorded everything from fox tracks to high-heeled intruders. I pulled up the footage from the past 2 weeks and started analyzing. Sure enough, 3 nights before Karen showed up, I spotted 2 figures near the eastern ridge. Hard hats, reflective vests, one carrying a geologic probe. No license plates on their truck, just a covered flatbed heavy enough to carry drilling equipment. They didn't cross the boundary line, but they didn't have to. They were scouting, measuring, cataloging. Then, 2 nights later, a quadcopter drone zipped overhead, silent, infrared lenses, just low enough to avoid FAA detection. It made 3 passes over the owl nesting site. That was the final proof I needed. I contacted Jenkins via the encrypted line we set up years ago. His voice was terse but focused when he answered. I figured you'd be watching footage already, he said. You get what we need? I've got enough to bury them in federal court, I said. Thermal drone, unauthorized survey teams, and Karen trying to bait a legal reaction. It's a coordinated play. Jenkins didn't waste time. Send me the clips. I'll route them to the Environmental Crimes Division. You up for going public? I hesitated. Going public meant more than just stopping a land grab. It meant attention, journalists, reporters sniffing around, protesters too, both sides of the spectrum. But then I remembered the owls, their quiet nests tucked beneath the stone arches in the creek cave, completely unaware that they were sitting on the edge of extinction. I couldn't let this place become another parking lot or luxury spa. I'd sacrificed too much to protect it. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. We launched Operation Prairie Justice the next morning. It started simply. I set up the live stream using my drone cams and internal grid. The headline was blunt enough to stop thumbs mid-scroll. Land developers caught sabotaging federal wildlife reserve. Full evidence stream. I included night vision footage, time-stamped overlays, even a clip of Karen slapping me followed by Officer Jenkins saluting. That part went viral in under an hour. The internet did what it does best. Memes exploded. Slapgate trended worldwide. Someone looped the moment the slap connected and added a punchline where Karen gets tackled by a goat. Celebrities shared it. Environmental groups jumped in. Politicians started tweeting about corruption in land zoning. Within 2 days, Greenvine Holdings was on the defensive, but they didn't back down. Instead, they sent in round 2. That's when the HOA showed up. Not my HOA, because I didn't live in one. These were outsiders Karen had apparently rallied. Her suburban warriors, people so addicted to neighborhood power they carried measuring tapes in their purses. They came in SUVs with tinted windows, armed with clipboards, laminated bylaws, and cameras. The leader, a balding man with a smug smile and a name tag that said Braden, walked onto my property like he owned it. We are here to assess compliance with regional residential codes, he announced, his voice smug enough to curdle milk. Residential? I laughed. This is a working ranch. He didn't flinch. Still falls under county development guidelines. Your fencing is irregular. Your livestock ratio exceeds the humane limits outlined in Section 12A. And you have an unlicensed rooster. You just made that up, I said. Braden smiled. Did I? You'll have to take it up with the council. They started snapping pictures, measuring fence heights. One woman crouched down with a laser level and started scolding my chickens for walking too close to the fence line. Another tried to shoo a goat off the porch, only to get gently headbutt into a wheelbarrow full of manure. I didn't stop them. I let the whole thing unfold while the hidden cams rolled. Every ridiculous moment, every fake citation, every demand to present my homeowner permit. Then I streamed that too. By the 3rd day, my ranch had become the internet's favorite reality show. People were tuning in just to see what would happen next. A fan page popped up. Someone offered to send legal support. Another offered to build me a drawbridge in case the HOA tried to storm the barn. The tide had turned, but I knew the most dangerous moves were still coming. This was the chaos phase. Greenvine wanted me tangled in noise, distracted by Karen clones and clipboard commandos. They were hoping I'd slip up, make a mistake, or abandon the land out of exhaustion. Instead, I doubled down. I activated the long-range drones, pulled up the archived footage from the cave sensors, and reached out to a documentary filmmaker I'd once helped smuggle footage of illegal oil dumping. She owed me. Now I was calling in the favor. We put together a 3-minute mini-doc about the owls, their rarity, their beauty, their place in this ecosystem. The footage was stunning. Nesting sequences, nighttime hunts, the haunting echo of their calls through the stone canyons. We ended the video with a quiet, simple message. They can't speak for themselves, but we can. It shattered records. Donations poured in. The land was trending again, but this time it wasn't about Karen or slaps or HOA madness. It was about preservation, the truth behind the drama, the story that actually mattered. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that Greenvine wasn't done. Because cornered animals don't give up. They lash out. And something told me the next time they came for this ranch, they wouldn't bring clipboards. They'd bring bulldozers. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when I heard it, a deep, guttural rumble that didn't belong to any animal on my land. I sat up in bed, heart already pounding, and reached for the small monitor beside my nightstand. My network of ground sensors had picked up the vibrations minutes before my ears caught the sound. A flashing red dot pulsed on the eastern ridge, right near the tree line where the old deer path cut through the woods. They were here, the real players. No more suburban decoys or HOA noise. This was the strike, the move they'd been setting up since the day Karen slapped me in broad daylight. Greenvine Holdings had finally brought out the heavy machinery. I threw on my boots and jacket, grabbed the emergency pack I always kept by the door, and slipped out into the cool night air. The stars were clear overhead, the moon casting a pale glow over the fields, but the serenity was shattered by the unnatural growl of engines climbing the ridge. As I reached the edge of the west pasture, I spotted the first bulldozer, massive, yellow, armored, its blade angled forward like a battering ram. Behind it, 2 trucks carried floodlights, generators, and excavation gear. They were trying to clear a makeshift road straight through the protected grove and into the north field, the exact path to the Owl Cave system. I activated my comm link. Jenkins, it's happening. They're clearing the ridge. East entrance. 3 vehicles, possibly more behind them. Static crackled for a moment before his voice came through, calm but sharp. I'm 20 minutes out. Lock down your perimeter. Engage passive deterrence. Record everything. I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted to the main control panel hidden in the old well shed and activated the deterrent grid. Spotlights buried in fence posts snapped on, flooding the area with blinding light. A dozen motion-triggered speakers let out a series of sharp bird distress calls mixed with sirens, meant to confuse intruders and protect wildlife zones. But these weren't amateurs. They kept pushing forward. One of the men, wearing a helmet with a tinted visor, stepped forward and waved at the bulldozer operator to keep going. I recognized him from one of the drone captures. His name was Roland Graves, head of Greenvine's on-ground logistics, which was just a fancy way of saying the guy they sent in to break things quietly. He glanced up at my camera mounted on a tree limb and smirked. Then he pulled out a signal jammer and pointed it at the drone station behind the barn. I was ready for that. The jammer disabled one drone, but the others, part of a redundant network, worked separately. Roland thought he was turning off the cameras, but all he did was switch the stream to backup feeds, now broadcasting directly to federal cloud servers. Every move they made was still being recorded. Every step closer they took was another nail in their corporate coffin. But then they upped the ante. A 4th vehicle arrived, unmarked, matte black, with a covered trailer. From it, they unloaded drilling gear. They weren't just trying to clear a path. They were planning to set up seismic charges to scan the underground cave system for potential resource extraction. It wasn't about land development anymore. They suspected there were mineral deposits beneath the ridge. If they could prove it, they could claim eminent domain under certain state exceptions. It was dirty, underhanded, and nearly impossible to fight without ironclad evidence, which thankfully I had. I activated the drone swarm, 6 units hovering just above tree level, lights off, cameras on. They swept over the intruders silently, capturing angles from every side. I routed the live feed into the public stream. Thousands of people were watching by now, many of them journalists, environmentalists, and some legal analysts who had taken a particular interest in the case. The moment the drill was fired up, the chat exploded. Viewers started tagging federal agencies, state officials, and environmental watchdogs. Greenvine had wanted this to be a silent invasion. Instead, it had become a national broadcast, but things turned violent fast. Roland spotted one of the drones and pulled out a high-powered laser pointer, not the kind used for boardroom presentations, the kind that could blind camera lenses and fry circuits. He targeted 2 units, frying their optics midair. Then he shouted something to his crew, who began unloading fencing material from the trucks. They were trying to enclose the ridge to claim it as a temporary survey site. Once enclosed, they could argue in court that the area had no active landowner presence. It was a loophole often used by aggressive developers in gray zones. Except they forgot one crucial fact. This wasn't a gray zone. This was a federally protected wildlife habitat, and I was its appointed guardian. I triggered the emergency alert beacon, the one I swore I'd never use unless the caves were directly threatened. It sent an encrypted signal to 3 agencies simultaneously: the Department of Environmental Security, the State Wildlife Protection Unit, and the Bureau of Federal Land Integrity. Within seconds, I got confirmation. Officers were en route. A helicopter had been scrambled. Roland and his team didn't know it yet, but they were about to be surrounded. Back on the ridge, things got tense. One of the bulldozer drivers, clearly uncomfortable, stopped the machine. Roland stormed up to him, yelling, jabbing a finger at the ignition. The driver shook his head. He wasn't willing to be the guy who flattened an endangered owl habitat on live stream. Roland shoved him. Big mistake. The man jumped down and walked away, disappearing into the woods with a flashlight. The rest of the crew began to hesitate. The plan was falling apart. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for. Rotors. A dark green chopper crested the tree line, searchlights sweeping over the ridge. Officers began rappelling down like a scene out of a heist movie gone wrong. Roland froze, his hands still gripping the drill mount. Floodlights snapped onto him, and a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Step away from the equipment and place your hands on your head. You are trespassing on protected federal land and interfering with a classified ecological preservation site. You are under arrest. He didn't move for a second. Then, slowly, he raised his hands, turning toward the camera. His face was blank, not fear, not even anger, just defeat. As officers took Roland and his crew into custody, I watched from the shadows of my old oak tree, heart still hammering in my chest. I defended this land with everything I had, not just tools and tech, but grit, patience, knowledge, and a refusal to back down. But even as they led him away in cuffs, I knew something else. Greenvine wasn't done. Roland was just a piece on the board, and in games like these, the real king never steps onto the battlefield until the very end. The sun rose slowly the next morning, casting a golden light over a land that had survived the night. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, the ranch was quiet, not with the silence of tension, but with the calm that follows a battle won. The officers had cleared the ridge before dawn, escorted every last member of Roland's team into custody, and flagged the machinery for evidence collection. The cave was untouched, the owls safe, the earth unscarred. As I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the mist curl over the fields, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile kind that hangs on a thread of luck, but the solid kind earned through stubbornness and strategy. But even in peace, I stayed alert. This land didn't defend itself. It needed people like me to do it, people who knew its history, its secrets, its soul. That morning, a familiar sound cut through the crisp air, boots on gravel. Officer Jenkins approached, same calm stride, same no-nonsense look. He nodded at me as he reached the porch and handed over a thick file. Court orders, he said. The federal injunction went through. Greenvine Holdings is officially barred from stepping within 2 miles of this property. Temporary protective designation has been upgraded to permanent. I flipped through the paperwork, seals, signatures, maps. It was done. The ranch was no longer just a private property or a protected site under my care. It was now part of the National Ecological Preservation Registry, its boundaries marked on state and federal maps, its status untouchable by developers or loophole artists. They pushed hard, Jenkins added, sipping from the cup I handed him. Tried to argue that they were doing mineral research for a green energy project, claimed they were victims of misinformation. But the footage, the live streams, the owl documentary, every piece stacked against them. The public backlash alone made their stock tank. I nodded. And Karen? He chuckled. Community service. 60 days at the County Wildlife Rescue Center. She starts next week. First assignment is mucking out enclosures and bottle-feeding orphaned raccoons. For a moment, we both stood in silence, soaking in the surreal end to what had started as a ridiculous confrontation in the middle of my pasture. Who would have guessed that a slap and a misread deed would unravel a multi-million-dollar scheme? By mid-morning, people started showing up, not in protest or fury, but in celebration. Locals from town, neighbors who had watched the drama unfold online, a couple of journalists who asked permission before setting foot on the property. One of them, a young woman from a major environmental outlet, approached with a small camcorder. Can we do a short interview? She asked. Just a statement about what this win means for landowners and wildlife conservation. I glanced at Jenkins. He nodded. I looked into her lens and spoke, not just for the viewers, but for every rancher, every silent guardian of overlooked corners of nature. This isn't just about my land, I said. It's about every place someone thinks is too small to matter. Every piece of earth that doesn't make a profit on paper, but holds life, history, meaning. We don't protect it because it makes money. We protect it because once it's gone, we can't bring it back. The video went viral again, but this time not because of conflict or absurdity. It went viral because people saw something real, a fight worth watching, a story worth repeating. Over the next few weeks, things changed. The government offered to help fund a formal educational center on the property. I agreed, with one condition, that it would remain small, local, and focused on preserving the land's natural rhythm. No flashy exhibits, No ticket booth, just walking trails, guided tours, and a small wildlife hospital on the southern ridge where injured animals could be treated and released. Kids started visiting on school trips. Scientists came to document the owl colony. And once, during a particularly quiet afternoon, I watched a family of hikers stand in silent awe as 3 glacier owls soared over the creek. They didn't talk, didn't shout, just watched. That was enough. As for the ranch, it remained what it had always been, a place of hard work, quiet mornings, and the occasional goat-related chaos. I still fixed fences, fed animals, repaired equipment. The difference now was the absence of paranoia. I no longer worried about helicopters at night or mysterious survey flags. That part of the battle was over. One day, while I was unloading a feed delivery, a sleek black truck pulled up. For a second I tensed, old habits. But when the door opened and I saw the unmistakable hat and badge, I relaxed. Jenkins stepped out, holding something in a case. "Got something for you," he said. He opened the case and revealed a polished brass plaque. It read, "Federal Wildlife Consultant, Field Commander Emeritus. Honorary title," he said, "for services above and beyond in protecting classified conservation zones." I took it, stared at it for a moment, and then laughed. "Looks fancy. You sure I deserve it?" He gave me a look. "You've been acting like a field commander since the day Karen slapped you. Might as well make it official." We installed the plaque by the gate, next to the old wooden sign that had been there since I moved in. It made for a strange pair, the faded wood saying, "Welcome to Ridge Creek Ranch," and the shiny brass reminding everyone that this wasn't just a ranch anymore. It was a fortress, a sanctuary, a statement. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows over the fields, Jenkins and I sat on the porch again, sipping coffee that had gone cold. He broke the silence. "Think they'll try again?" "Maybe," I said. "Greenvine's not the only wolf in the woods. But they'll think twice before they come here." He nodded. "You did good, brother. Real good." As he stood to leave, he paused, turned, and saluted once more, not out of formality, but out of respect, the same way he had that first day when Karen's hand left a sting on my cheek and the world shifted. And just like that, he was gone, his truck disappearing down the gravel path as dusk swallowed the hills. I stayed there a while longer, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling in for the night, chickens rustling in their coop, horses nickering softly, an owl hooting in the distance, its call echoing across the open land. This place had almost been taken from me, but now it belonged to something bigger than me, bigger than any one person. It belonged to the wild, and for as long as I drew breath, I'd make sure it stayed that way.